Same salary. Same city. One number, 10 times apart. Vivian makes $58,000 a year. So does Derek. Neither of them is lying about it. Neither of them is hiding a second job, a trust fund, or a secret inheritance. Same number, printed on 2 different pay stubs, in 2 different apartments across the same American city. On the 28th of the month, Vivian checks her account. $190. That's what's left. 2 days before payday, and she's already doing the math on whether the grocery run can wait until Monday. Derek checks his account on the same day. $2,100. Not saved up over years. Not a bonus. Just there. Sitting in his checking account on the same Tuesday, from the same kind of paycheck. 2 facts. They shouldn't both be true at the same time. But they are, and once you see why, you'll start finding this exact gap everywhere you look. Here's what it isn't. It isn't that Derek eats at home more. It isn't that Vivian has a shopping problem. It isn't rent. They're both paying close to the same $1,900 a month for a 1-bedroom in neighborhoods 4 blocks apart. It isn't even willpower. Vivian has more discipline than most people would guess. She just never noticed the one decision that was quietly working against her every single month since the day she opened her checking account. Ask most people to guess the difference, and they'll reach for the obvious answers first. A side hustle, a cheaper apartment, parents helping with the down payment somewhere in the background. None of that is true here. What's actually true is smaller, quieter, and far less satisfying as an explanation, which is exactly why almost nobody goes looking for it. Let's start with Vivian. 29 years old, marketing coordinator, has had the same checking account since she was 22. Paycheck lands on the 1st and the 15th. From there, everything just happens. Rent comes out automatically. Card payments happen when she remembers. Groceries, gas, the occasional dinner out, all pulled straight from the same account, in whatever order the bills decide to show up. She's not reckless. She checks her balance most days. But checking a balance and controlling a balance are 2 completely different skills, and nobody ever taught her the second one. Now, Derek, 31, works in logistics, similar salary, similar rent. Here's the difference, and it's smaller than you'd expect. The day his paycheck lands, before he spends a single dollar on anything else, $400 moves automatically into a separate high-yield savings account. Not because he's rich. Not because he has extra room in his budget. Because the transfer happens before he ever sees the money sitting in checking, tempting him to spend it. That's it. That's the entire mechanism. Pay yourself first before the month gets a chance to eat the difference, before rent, before groceries, before any of it feels like spendable cash sitting in an account with your name on it. Derek didn't design this system himself, and he'll be the first to tell you that. His older brother set up the same transfer for him 3 years ago, sat with him for maybe 10 minutes, picked a high-yield account paying 4.6%, and scheduled the transfer for the same morning his paycheck clears. Derek hasn't touched the setting since. He doesn't check that account daily. Some months he forgets it exists, which, it turns out, is exactly the point. Vivian has never had that 10-minute conversation with anyone. Nobody sat her down and separated the money before she saw it. So every dollar she earns lands in one place, gets treated as one undifferentiated pool, and gets spent in whatever order the month decides to present its bills and temptations. $400 a month sounds small. It doesn't feel like the kind of number that explains a $1,900 gap between 2 people earning the same income. But run the math with him. $400 moved automatically 12 times a year is $4,800 removed from temptation before Derek's brain even registers it as spendable. Meanwhile, in a high-yield savings account earning 4.6%, that money isn't just sitting there. It's growing quietly in the background, adding roughly $110 in interest by year's end. Vivian's $400 never had that chance. It sat in checking, visible, available, and eventually spent. Not on anything dramatic. $11 here for a delivery fee she didn't need to pay. $15 there for a subscription she forgot she signed up for in 2023. $6 for the coffee that felt like nothing in the moment 3 times a week, every week for a year. None of these purchases would embarrass her if you listed them out loud. That's exactly the point. Nothing about her spending looks irresponsible. It just looks unprotected. Add it up properly because the number is bigger than it feels in the moment. 3 streaming services she signed up for during different months, 2 of which she opened maybe 4 times total this year, $38 a month. A grocery delivery app's membership fee, renewed automatically every March, $9 a month, averaged out. The coffee, not because coffee is the villain here, but because 3 cups a week at $6 each is $78 a month, every month, whether she's thinking about it or not. None of it is a single bad decision. It's dozens of tiny, reasonable-feeling decisions made by someone with no system stopping them, adding up to roughly $140 a month in spending she'd struggle to justify if you asked her to defend each charge individually. That's not the whole gap between her and Derek, but it's the visible third of it, the part that shows up as a real, itemized number on her statement instead of just a feeling of money disappearing. Here's the number that makes this real. If Vivian's money sits visible in a checking account, research on spending behavior consistently shows people spend a significant share of what's visible and available. Not because they're weak, but because visible money invites decisions, and decisions, repeated daily, always find somewhere to go. Derek's money never got the chance to invite a decision. It was gone from checking before the question could even be asked. Think about how many times a day you actually look at a bank balance without meaning to. The gas station pump asks. The delivery app asks, right there next to the checkout button. The banking app itself asks, every time a notification lights up the screen. Each one is a tiny negotiation, not a big one. Never a single moment you'd call reckless. Just a quiet I have room for this, don't I? Multiply that by 30 days, and the total isn't really about any one purchase. It's about how many times the money was given the opportunity to be spent at all. This is the part most advice gets backwards. Most people are told to budget harder, track every purchase, categorize every receipt, feel guilty about the $6 coffee. Vivian tried that in January. She lasted 11 days. Willpower is a terrible long-term strategy against a system designed to test it 3 times a day, every time she opens her banking app and sees a number that looks spendable. Derek isn't stronger than Vivian. He just removed the test entirely. Let's go further into what $400 a month actually becomes, because the gap on the 28th is only the visible part. Run it out 10 years. $400 a month, invested instead of just saved, earning something close to the historical stock market average of 10.5% a year, becomes roughly $82,000. Not from a raise. Not from a better job. From one transfer that happens on autopilot, on the same day, every single month, without Derek having to make a single willpower decision after the first one. Vivian's $58,000, over that same 10 years, if nothing changes, becomes exactly what it is right now on the 28th of every month. $190. Over and over. A decade of the same paycheck producing the same result, because the system around it never changed. Say both of them get the same modest raises over that decade, 3% a year, nothing dramatic, just keeping pace with inflation the way most jobs do. Derek's automatic transfer scales up along with it because he set the transfer as a habit, not a fixed number he has to remember to adjust. Vivian's spending scales up too, just in the other direction. More income usually means more subscriptions, a slightly nicer apartment, dinners out that feel earned. 10 years in, Derek isn't just $82,000 ahead. He's $82,000 ahead of someone whose income also grew, which means the gap isn't closing on its own. It's the system, not the salary, doing the compounding. This is where most people watching assume the fix is complicated. It isn't. It's one setting, changed once. Take Denise, 51, a hospital administrative assistant in a mid-sized city, earning $52,000 a year, less than both Vivian and Derek. For 14 years, she lived exactly like Vivian does now. Checking account. Everything pulled from the same pool, nothing separated. At 44, she set up one automatic transfer, $200 the day after payday, into an account she couldn't easily see from her banking app's main screen. Not because $200 was comfortable. It wasn't for the first 3 months, but her spending adjusted to what was left, the same way it always had. She just gave it a smaller pool to adjust to. 7 years later, That one setting is worth just over $21,000. She didn't get a raise that changed her life. She changed the order two things happened in. Denise will tell you the first 3 months were the hardest part, and that matters because it means this isn't a magic trick. It's a real adjustment, not a painless one. She canceled a gym membership she wasn't using. She started buying store-brand groceries instead of name brand, which saved her closer to $60 a month than she expected. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that made her feel deprived by month 4, because by then, $200 simply wasn't part of her spendable money anymore. Her brain stopped negotiating with it the same way it had stopped negotiating with her rent payment years earlier. Rent isn't optional, so nobody agonizes over it daily. Denise made her savings the same kind of non-negotiable. That's the real shift. Not more discipline. A different category entirely, moving savings from money I might use if I have extra into money that was never available to begin with, the exact same mental bucket as rent, insurance, or a phone bill. Here's the actual mechanism, stripped down to what matters. Money that's visible gets spent. Money that's automatic and out of sight gets protected, not through discipline, but through simply never being asked the question. Vivian's $400 a month gets asked, "Wanna spend me?" Roughly 90 times a month, every time she checks her balance, taps her card, or opens a delivery app. Derek's $400 gets asked that question 0 times, because it's already gone before the question exists. This isn't about earning more. Vivian and Derek prove that point by definition. Same income, opposite outcome. It's not about deserving it more either. It's entirely about which 28 days of the month your money spends being visible and which 28 days it spends being untouchable. So here's where this actually leaves you. Watching this on your own phone, with your own paycheck landing on your own schedule. There are 2 versions of the next 10 years available to you, and the difference between them isn't your salary. In one version, your money sits in checking exactly like Vivian's does, visible, available, quietly answering yes to 100 small questions a month. Until the 28th arrives, and there's less than $200 standing between you and payday, year after year, regardless of how many raises show up along the way. 5 years from now, in this version, you're still doing the same math on the same date, wondering why a bigger paycheck never seems to translate into a bigger cushion. In the other version, you do exactly one thing before you do anything else this week. You set up one automatic transfer, not $400 if that's not realistic for you, even 50 or 100, whatever number would still let you pay every bill without stress. And you schedule it for the same day your paycheck lands, before you've had the chance to see that money as spendable. That single change doesn't require a better job, a bigger income, or more discipline than you already have. It requires removing the question, the same way Derek did, the same way Denise did 7 years before she ever saw $21,000 sitting where $200 used to disappear. Here's what that actually looks like in practice, tonight, not someday. Open a high-yield savings account. Most pay somewhere between 4.2 and 4.8% right now, and opening one takes about 10 minutes on a phone. Set up one automatic transfer, dated for the same day your paycheck lands, for an amount that still lets you breathe. Then, and this is the part people skip, remove that account from the main screen of your banking app, or don't link a card to it at all, so it stops being a number you see every time you check your balance. That's the entire system, not a spreadsheet. Not a budgeting app you'll abandon in 11 days like Vivian did. One transfer, one time, that keeps happening whether you think about it or not. 5 years from now, in this version, you're not checking a balance on the 28th wondering if it'll hold until payday. You're glancing at an account you barely think about. Watching a number that started at $50 or $100 or $400 a month quietly turn into something with 5 figures in front of it, not because you got lucky. And not because you earn dramatically more, but because you stopped asking your money the same question 90 times a month and let it answer once, automatically, before you ever had the chance to talk yourself out of it. You already know which 28th you'd rather be looking at a year from now. Vivian didn't know either version was available to her until she saw the gap laid out in real numbers, and once she did, the fix took her 4 minutes on her phone, not 4 months of budgeting classes. Derek's brother didn't hand him a financial degree. He handed him one setting, on one app, scheduled for one date. The only real question left is whether you set up that transfer tonight, or whether you check your account next month and find the same $190 waiting for you again.